get this rolling.
All right, folks, home stretch. We can do this. I was low-key worried that we might be hitting into the sugar crash from the donut this morning, so thank you for re-upping the sugar dosage, and hopefully there's a lot going on in your brain right now, like a lot of good glucose kind of swirling up there. So this talk's going to be, I guess, a little different than some of the talks that we've seen already today and yesterday. A little less on the technical side, in fact, not on the technical side at all. I'm going to ask you to change your mindset a little bit in approaching this talk today. I think we're going to switch over from your more logical, programmatic side of your brain over to the part that focuses on empathy and human connection. And I can guarantee that there will be no Ken C. Dodds references in this talk. However, maybe I just made one now, so Ken C. Dodds is like the star of the show. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah Jane Morris. Please call me SJ. I have spent the last 15 years of my career working on building out technical communities, and the last 8 of those 15 have been quite focused on developers. And now I myself am not actually a developer. I have dabbled in the art of code a little bit here and there, but that part of my brain is not happy. So what I have done has been to kind of dedicate my career to working with developers who are folks that I really enjoy working with, because I love to see what y'all can create. And what I've sort of gotten to, the point that I've gotten to in my career at this point has been to help create and build communities that are welcoming and inclusive for developers. So, I've worked at companies like Mashery, Intel, Keen.io, and most recently Shopify, which I'm sure folks here in Ottawa know about. I recently launched my own developer community consultancy called Listen Community Consulting. And again, we're all about growing inclusive and welcoming developer communities. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly through what we're going to cover today. And I will get into some essential definition slides shortly. So do you even want your experience, which I'll define in a moment, to be inclusive? Who are you actually building it for? Have you asked folks if this is actually something that they want? Who's the founding team and what are the implications of the founding team? Are you seeking out diverse feedback? Are you using welcoming language and imagery? And then is there a code of conduct in place? Who are you sharing this developer experience with? And finally, do you have open feedback channels to kind of re-inform your developer experience to make sure it's inclusive? All right, so what the heck am I talking about when I'm talking about developer experiences? One thing I should have mentioned off the top, I'm really taking like a really 30,000 foot view here of this topic. We are talking about anything developer facing at this point. It can be frameworks, libraries, APIs, docs, even a developer conference like this one, developer meetups, anything that has a potential of other developers being involved or using it. So you'll notice I'll be kind of using different words in different contexts. I might say project here, I might say meetup there, but at the end of the day, these questions that I'm going to go through are going to help you frame any kind of developer-facing experience. And so what do I mean when I'm talking about inclusion and inclusive? This is a word that's been on the tip of our tongues in tech for the last few years, which is fantastic. It's extremely important, and I'm really glad that this has been a topic of conversation and dialogue in the tech community, as well as in other communities as well, but I'm obviously going to be talking mostly about the tech community. But one thing I want to make really, really clear is that it's almost become a buzzword to the point of folks not necessarily knowing what they're talking about when they actually talk about diversity and inclusion. And so there's a few important definitions I want to make before I dive into the questions. The work that's been done thus far in the tech industry specifically on diversity and inclusion has largely been in the context of HR and recruitment and in company culture, which is extremely important, and there's been a lot of brilliant people doing great work there. But I think it's really important to observe that there hasn't been as much intentional thought about applying these critiques and studies to developer communities and communities in general. And so just to go back for a minute, when I'm talking about inclusion, it's really quite simple. Inclusion is really about not just inviting different kinds of people to your experience. It's about making sure they feel extremely welcome and you're welcoming them with open arms. I want to talk a little bit about what are the questions you can ask yourself while you're building out your project to make sure you're thinking inclusively all along the way. One more thing, I may be dropping the word privilege a little bit here and there, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page for the definition of that. Privilege is really a systematic advantages enjoyed by certain groups of people, and so a couple of examples are, I think we're all relatively familiar with the gender pay gap, that men historically have made more money than women for the same job, and things like those who have more access to college through family lineage or wealth. So there's endless amounts of privilege, ways to give you examples of privilege, but I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page there. And so I just threw this in at the last minute, just to identify what I'm talking about when I'm talking about diversity. There's many different dimensions that make up who we are in this world and how we sort of interact with the world and how it impacts our day-to-day lives. And so, spin the wheel of diversity, find yourself on this wheel, and understand that these dimensions impact the way that you're going to experience the world and the experiences that you'll have within communities. Okay, so first question. Do you even want your experience or project to be inclusive? If the answer is no, that's totally fine. I'm not here to judge. You may not get a lot out of the rest of this presentation, but you will enjoy a few more cute animal pics, so stick around for that, I guess. What I want to say is that there's not just, making sure that your project or experience is inclusive is not just the right thing to do, which it absolutely is in this world that we live in. It's also going to make it so much better. If you're getting diverse kinds of feedback and you're making sure that you're weaving that feedback into your iterations, you're going to have a much stronger product or project. So who are you actually building for? If you're just building for yourself, that's fine. But if you're building for anyone that may benefit from using the tool or attending the meetup or whatever it may be, whatever developer experience that you're focused on, it's important to be asking these questions. And make sure in the really early stages, you don't have to start going around gathering a ton of feedback from different folks, but just challenge your own assumptions. Look at things from different ways. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. Just take the time and really think things through. All right, so you have an idea. Maybe you want to build the next great, React library, something like that. Is this something that folks want? You're asking your friends, of course, you're all working in the same place, they're gonna say yes, which is great. And I'm definitely not saying that you shouldn't ask your friends for feedback, because they're a safe and wonderful place to go. But I'm saying, stretch yourself a little bit. Seek out alternative viewpoints. There are a few places that you can go online, some really fantastic communities to do this. One such community that I have really taken to over the last couple of years is an organization called Dev2. And so that website is dev.to, which sounds a lot like DevTO, so I don't know if there's anyone here from Toronto. It's kind of the same name, but anyway. They are really just a fantastic online community. Folks are just posting ideas, discussions, all kinds of different things, and getting really diverse feedback. So it's a place to go and just throw up your idea, see what people think, and get some feedback and start some conversations. I will kind of do a personal aside here. How many people in the room are familiar with Hacker News? Yeah, so I know that there has been a lot of focus on, if you have a product launch or you want to ask for advice, to go to Hacker News to do such things. And for sure, there's the potential, if you hit the top 10 on Hacker News, that you'll get a traffic boost for that day. But I honestly think that it hasn't been a well-maintained community. It's not a community that has safety standards in mind. I actually consider it to be quite toxic. So definitely, to me, Dev2 is kind of the really inclusive inverse of Hacker News. So I'm a big fan. All right, question for to ask yourself. So who is the founder and who is the founding team? If you look around, and statistically speaking, if you're in tech, you're likely male, possibly white. If your founding team consists of yourself and you fall into that category and you look around and the rest of your team looks like you, that's completely great and fine. Just take the time to be extra intentional about what you're building and the messages that you're sending out to the community as you build it. Studies have proven that diversity and inclusion initiatives only work from the top down. So, if a CEO is extremely interested in making sure and being explicit about the importance of inclusion for their communities, then there's a lot of opportunities to express that. Next point. So question 5, I'm just gonna take a little sip of my LaCroix. Who knows? Have you gotten diverse feedback? Now that you've gotten to the point where you've vetted the idea, you have an actual team that's like fleshing out all the details, are you asking for different kinds of folks for actual feedback about the product, not just the idea or project or meetup or whatever it may be? I want to give 2 examples and tell you 2 quick stories that showcase both an example of when this didn't happen and a proactive example of inclusion by Slack. So I was at a conference called Tech Inclusion a couple of years ago in San Francisco, and I heard a fantastic talk by a woman named Nancy Duyan, and she is a UX project manager at Google, I believe, and her talk was entirely about ensuring that you get diverse product feedback. And this story was so simple, but really showcased the importance of getting diverse feedback. She was talking about, and I think this was when the Oculus had just launched, the Oculus VR headset, just sort of new to the market at the time. And she was really excited to try it out for the first time herself. And when she tried it out, she noticed that there was no way to actually completely put it on her head because she had thick braids. And then she also followed up with some stories of folks wearing turbans that could not wear the VR headset. So, I mean, obviously they were not testing with a diverse group. Such a missed opportunity for Oculus. And then on the flip side, this is an extremely simple example, and I kind of wish I had some graphics for it, but you can check it out yourself. This is another talk I saw in Seattle a couple years ago at the DevRel Summit. Someone named Tomomi Umura, who works at Slack. She was showcasing the importance of not making assumptions about your audience in your docs. And she showed the Slack page, or the Slack docs page, all about OAuth. And it's quite a simple thing, but on Slack's OAuth pages, they actually define what OAuth is and don't assume you know. So for different developers at different stages, another element or dimension of diversity is not just all of the demographic stuff that we talk about a lot, it's also technical skill. So not making assumptions about where your developers are at in things like docs. All right, so now number 6, you've gotten to the point where you're starting to get some feedback. You're putting together some material around your project. Are you using welcoming language? I've read my fair share of READMEs on various repos over the years. And of course, READMEs should be completely straightforward, tactical, to the point. But there's language that you can use that is less alienating for folks who are new to development. And so just make a point to even things like your READMEs to make sure that they're inclusive and welcoming. There are tools out there that can help you do that. One such tool that is actually based, again, on HR and recruitment, it's called Textio. What Textio does is it allows you to input content, and it will identify specific words that have historically shown over time to be alienating to specific kinds of people. The reason why they do this is because it's entirely based on job applications, so they have a way of I'm not explaining this that well, but they have a way of being able to identify which words cause drop-off with different demographic dimensions. So words that, like rock star, for example, or, I don't know, PHP ninja, something like that. Those words are words that will cause alienation with certain groups. So inputting your READMEs or whatever it may be, any content into Textio will give you some really interesting results and give you pause. Again, everything that I'm referencing here, you can find at lsn2.us/inclusion. So all the resources will be there. And the next question to follow up on language is about imagery. And this one is, I would say, a little bit more nuanced. There are opportunities to elevate images of underrepresented folks in tech in the projects that you're working on, but you have to be careful. If you're, for example, putting together a company website and you showcase folks of color on your website, you actually don't have any folks of color actually working there. That's going to be really alienating to someone who's applying to your company or potentially wanting to join your community. So make sure you use these images in an authentic way. There are opportunities when you're putting out a blog post about a new feature or you're talking about an event to use stock images that are available widely and just, you know, normalize the images of all kinds of different human beings. So a couple of references or resources that you can use to do that. There is a Flickr collection called Women of Color in Tech that has a lot of beautiful images that you can use. And Broadly, which is a Vice Media publication, I guess, they just launched something called the Gender Spectrum Collection, which shows trans and non-binary folks in just day-to-day situations to really normalize the images there. So again, you can find those on listen2us/inclusion. All right, the next one is a loaded one. This is about codes of conduct, and this is something I could talk about for a very long time, but I will just very quickly cover it here. A code of conduct needs to be in place for anything where there's going to be a community of folks that need to feel safe and need to have, like, there needs to be a sense that they will be welcome and in a safe space. So there are a lot of free resources to start to put together your own code of conduct. You don't have to write it from scratch. A lot of really awesome folks have done a lot of work for you. So one of the places I quite like to reference for code of conduct work and for all kinds of other really strong inclusion work is the Geek Feminism Wiki. I've linked to a really good sort of starter page on that website on my inclusion links, so feel free to check it out. Oh yeah, and the one thing I wanted to really make a point of for codes of conduct is it's fine and great to have them, and I feel like most open source projects have a replicable code of conduct, and most events have a code of conduct. But knowing how to enforce it is an entirely other thing. So when things come up, it's important to sort of run through what different scenarios might look like and be ready to respond. All right, so now we have put the sort of basics together. We have a code of conduct around our project. Who are we sharing this project with? Again, I'm not trying to say you should not, talk to your friends about all the cool stuff that you're doing, but please do. But talk to other people too. I'm going to reference Dev2 again. Once you have it live, you can post it on Dev2. Product Hunt is also another place where you can sort of launch your product if it's appropriate for the nature of what you're doing that gets a lot of eyeballs on it. And I just want to, make a point that you can even go to meetups and things like that to talk to different kinds of folks if you don't have them within your circle, do lightning talks, do workshops, lots of opportunities for different touch points. Okay, so now that you have got your project together, you're sort of getting really close to feeling like you've got something great to share. It's really important to make sure that you have open channels for feedback. And this is the sort of essence of inclusion. Once you've opened the doors to different kinds of folks to start to give you feedback about your project or whatever you're working on, there needs to be a way to integrate it and make sure it's actually making an impact on what you're doing. So maybe you have a support tool, sort of like Zendesk, where you're answering questions within a reasonable period of time. And I'm not going to get into a whole support side conversation now, but creating a knowledge base that showcases all the questions that have been asked, and maybe showing how you're integrating that into your product roadmap if that's appropriate, or if you're hosting a meetup or an event, possibly having a discussion board where it's very clear what feedback has been integrated and how you're responding to feedback from your community. So that's kind of, to me, the key of inclusion is constantly iterating based on diverse feedback. And I think I'm going to wrap up shortly. It's a bit of a short talk. The follow-up resources, as I mentioned, are on Listen to Us/inclusion. I also wanted to mention that I recently underwent training to do something called an Ally Skills Workshop. A woman named Valerie Aurora, who was very active with the Linux community, has taken it upon herself to create this Ally workshop, and the sort of goal of the workshop is for folks with more privilege to support underrepresented folks in their communities by doing the actual work of, calling out bad situations at work or in communities, and taking the onus off the oppressed folks to have to do that work themselves. And so I have gone through the workshop training. I guess, I don't know if I'm accredited or what, but I've officially gone through the training, and am looking forward to hosting a workshop. And actually the first one I do will be free if your organizations are interested in that, just because I want to get some practice. And so one thing I'm going to add also to my inclusion resources, I kind of realized this like 5 minutes ago, there are so many cool people to follow on Twitter that can teach you all about this stuff. Like, I don't think I would be anywhere close to where I am in my career if it wasn't for all of the amazing folks that I follow on Twitter. Either hit me up or I will add it to the page. And that's it. Like, if you want to add me on Twitter, here are the places, various places to add me. And I'm not going to read this thing about my company, but if you're looking for any consultancy around building out inclusive developer communities, please get in touch. Thank y'all. Are there any questions? I went through a lot of stuff, but